Hi, my name is Keith Cooper and I'm looking today at a macro slide rail from AstrHori. Why a macro slide rail? Well, I recently had the 2 to 5x macro lens. This one's RF mount. Got a written review of it and a video of it and some details. Very nice macro lens from AstrHori, a Chinese company, and it's 25mm f2.8. Although being macro, those things don't quite matter. This is one where you focus by actually moving the lens and the subject. Now, some of the examples I used in it, and here's one of the pictures with the view on the back. I'm using the EOS RP in live view mode connected. It's tethered to this computer here, and I'm using EOS utility for it. Just a very simple setup. Now, the macro rail that's in this is actually one that AstrHori have just released. They sent me the two together to look at, but the rail itself has only just been released. So what is a macro rail? Well, it's a device that it's a rail that your camera moves on as at its simplest. The example I've got here, you can see it sitting on with the camera sitting on it. You've got a coarse screw thread control which moves, I say coarse, you have to move it quite a few times to get it. So you get about a millimetre or so, couple of millimetres of movement per turn here. Well, it's fairly standard for a macro rail. There's some feet on the bottom of it, there's some fittings on the bottom of it. Now, if I look at the actual thing itself, you'll see it's got this sort of sidebar on it. This is a vernier gauge, and it's like you would get on a sort of mechanical micrometer, and you rotate this, and this is a very fine screw thread in it, and it advances the head backwards and forwards on the rail. There's a level on this, a bubble level as well, although typically if you're setting things up accurately you'll probably use external levels and things like that. Macro gets a very fiddly very fast as you go to higher magnifications. 2 times magnification for this, quite easy to use. 5 times magnification starts getting more difficult in terms of setting up and movement. Now, the actual thing has little feet on the bottom of it, so you can just, as I did in this example here, just stand it on a table. Now, it's pretty solid like that, but it's probably not solid enough for most macro stuff, so it's okay for just setting things up quickly. So you've got the coarse movement, you've got the fine movement. Now, for the fine movement on the gauge, there are 2 rotations of this per millimetre, which means you can actually move this in to 100th, well, better than 100th of a millimetre. That is very precise. You think, why do you need such precision? Well, once you start doing macro at 5 times, you will appreciate the ability to be able to move the camera backwards and forwards by a small fraction of an inch or millimetre. So we've got that. It's standard Arca type fitting at the top, so a clamp for that, and that fits onto the camera there. But yeah, what's it like to use? Well, it's nice and solidly built. It has, a minor glitch that I noticed on it, and this obviously is a test model. When you get the full version of it, you'll get an Allen key or an Allen wrench to be able to make some adjustments on it. What are the adjustments? Well, if you look at the picture here, you can see there is a rail that you can tighten, or a nut you can tighten up on here that helps lock the top here. That's fine, but I noticed that when you moved this, you got a rotating movement of the top of the head here. What that is caused by is that the clamps on the rails are not quite tightened up, and this is why you get an Allen key with it, because what you need to do is, to get access to them, is take off the micrometer here, and also you'll get access to the nuts here, these grub screws. They do have a blue sealing compound on them, but they seem quite loose, so they're not tightly sealed. What you need to do is, with this, is use the Allen key to lightly tighten on each side, and there are 2 sets. There is one for the top part of the rail, which is the bit that moves here, moved by the micrometer, and there's one for the bottom part of the mount here, which is moved by the main control here. So you need to just gently tighten those up so that there are some friction pads inside and they make sure everything moves smoothly. So a minor glitch, but I would expect on any macro stuff like this that I might need to make some adjustments. Things where you would need to change it anyway, so after a while of using this. One other slight bit that you need to be wary of is backlash in the control here. What it means is that there is a bit of movement to be taken up by this before the top of the arc head, before that starts moving. So it means that if you are moving in one direction, the movement is smooth. You can move it to tiny fraction of a millimetre. If you then want to back it off, there is a bit of slack to be taken up before the movement starts to come the other way. And remember too that because of the way this is built, there's always a possibility that you will get a slight bit of rotation as you change from moving one direction to the other. In general though, if you're using something like this for stacking, you tend to start at one end and do the stack of images like that. Now I've got a motorized, computer controlled movement for this because I do some macro photography commercially, and mainly electronic components and things like that. But that is much more expensive, much more fancy than something like this. One bit I noticed, AstrHori told me when they said that this is now available, is that they're doing a bundle with this. Is it worthwhile? If you haven't got any kit to do with your macro and you want to experiment with something like this, particularly at the 5x magnification, yeah, it works quite nicely. There are other things like this I've seen available. This one's solidly enough built. It's not. This is not a top precision one, but you would pay an awful lot of money for a very high precision movement. If your macro photography gets to that stage, well, maybe you want to spend more on it. But if you want something to just experiment with, this works very well. Most of the time, the movement you need is quite adequate from the main control here, and that is quite smooth and soft. It's only that fine control here where you have to remember that there could be a bit of backlash, and also you've got to make sure that all your bearings are set up properly. So there you have it, a small macro rail. Yeah, useful. It goes with a useful lens. If you've got any questions, let me know. I've got more photos and bits and pieces of that. I'll add some notes of this to the written review I've got of this lens because I used this during the testing. And well, anyway, thanks for watching. And if any topics you think of, you're curious about, that you think I might have just edged on, or what you want me to cover anymore, please do let me know, because I'm always looking for ideas. Somebody emails me and the response takes more than a couple of paragraphs answer, then that's a basic video I've done. So thanks for watching, and bye.